never done any 3D work in my life, and each one of these characters was generated from a single image. And nope, that's not a video. I can grab it, spin it around, look at the back of it, and drop it straight into a game if I want to. No blender, no modeling. All three of them together took me about half an hour. I'm going to show you 3 different ways to do this. First, we'll start from scratch in Claude Code, and you can watch it work the whole thing out on its own. Then we'll do exactly the same thing again in Codex, because I want you to see that this works because of the method and not because one tool is doing something special. And after that, I'll show you the quick version where you just paste a single file and it builds everything for you. By the end of this video, you'll be able to do it yourself and you won't need Blender or any 3D experience, and there's nothing to install. So let's begin. So before we start, let me quickly explain the tool I will be using. So this is Higgsfield, and it's a website where you can make images, videos, and audio with AI all in one place. This is the image section, and as you can see, there isn't just one model here. There's a whole list of them. Each one gives you a different look, and they all cost slightly different amount every time you make something. The video section works the same way, and there are just as many options in there. There are 2 other sections I want to point out while we're here. The first one is Cinema Studio, and that's the one for making films. Before you generate anything, you can set the camera and you can save characters and location and reuse them across different shots. So instead of writing a prompt and hoping it comes out well, you get some real control over how the shot looks. The second one is called Supercomputer, but this is not a machine even though the name sounds like one. It's more like an assistant. You tell it what you want and it works out all the steps, picks the right models, and puts everything together for you. It makes video, but it can also build websites, apps, and games. It's a bit like Claude Code, except it's for their own platform. Both of those are worth exploring on their own, but I'm not going to use either of them today. So why did I pick this platform? It's because I kept seeing their ads and videos about them on YouTube. And then I found out they have an MCP, which means I can run the whole thing from Claude Code or Codex instead of clicking around the website. I should also say that this video is not sponsored by them. And Higgsfield isn't the only platform that can generate AI content. There are plenty of others out there. So it was mainly the MCP that made me pick this one. So before we get into it, I want to be upfront about what you need. So if you want to try this for free, it might work, but only up to a point. When you sign up to Higgsfield, you get 10 free credits. And my first character, using the cheapest 3D model, came to exactly 9 credits. So in theory, 1 free character is possible. But I can promise that the cheapest model will always land on 9. So it might work for you and it might not. Then there's the tools themselves. If you don't have a paid Anthropic plan, you can't use Claude Code. You only get the chat. And if you are on a free OpenAI account, you can use Codex, but the usage limits are pretty tight. For this video, I already had paid plans for both Claude Code and Codex, and I subscribed to Higgsfield on the starter plan, which is $19 a month and give you 270 credits. So that's plenty for exploring all the 3D models. And if you want to go further than that, they also have Plus and Ultra. And one thing to watch out for on the pricing page, the prices you see by default are the annual one. So if you want to pay monthly, flip that switch first and you'll see what it actually costs and you won't get any surprise at the checkout. So once you got your account set up, the next thing is connecting it to your tools. And this part is easier than you expect. On the Higgsfield side, click the MCP and CLI tab. You'll see a few different options in there. One for Claude Code, one for ChatGPT, and a few others. For Claude Code, just copy the connector link, then go back into Claude Code, paste that link in, and just ask it to install it. Once it's done, open up your settings and go to the connectors tab and check that Higgsfield is turned on. If I click on it, you can see that it's already connected. This is also where you set the permission, so you can allow everything at once or go through them one by one if you rather have more controls. Codex is even simpler because it's already built in. Just go to the plugins tab, search for Higgsfield and hit install. Then you put in your login details, click allow so Codex can reach the platform, and that's it. Now both of them are connected, so let's actually use them. You can start with a prompt similar to this one. I tell it that I have the Higgsfield MCP connected, that I want to turn a flat image into a real 3D model that I can spin around in my browser, and that I want the whole thing done through Higgsfield. And that's worth doing properly because a clear first prompt saves you a lot of back and forth later on. From that, Claude lists out all of the 3D models that are available with a bit of detail on each one. This part is more technical side of thing, so you can pause and read through it if you want to. But the short version is that some model builds a 3D object from a single photo, some takes a few photos from different angles, and some don't need a picture at all because you just describe what you want. So for my second prompt, I asked which model would be the best fit for a single photo of a car and what each one would cost. And Claude goes and checks all of that, then gives you an estimate for every model, so you got a clear idea of what you're spending before you generate anything at all. Then I ask it to generate a sports car, and from that one command, Claude Code goes off and does everything with Higgsfield. You just follow its instruction if it asks you something. In this case, it gave me two options, variant A and variant B, so I picked variant A. After that, everything happens on its own. It goes from the reference image all the way through the 3D model, and you just wait. That's really it. Because the first prompt was already clear that I wanted a real model in a browser that I could spin around. So once the 3D model is finished, the scene is there waiting for me to interact with. And about 12 minutes later, we have our 3D models. So here you can see the reference image for the first car, and here is the reference image for the second one. And this is the final result. On the left, we got the model made with the cheapest option, Tripo, which costs 9 credits. And on the right is the same model, but with more detail at 18 credits. So for a first iteration, I think that's pretty good. Now, if I were doing this again for a car, I'd use one of the models that take 2 to 4 different views instead. Because right now it only had one reference image to work from. So everything else had to be guessed. And that's fine for a lot of objects, but a car is detailed, especially around the wheels and the back. So if you want a better result, feed it a few reference images from different sides. But for this first go, I think Tripo did a good job. If you got a paid plan, this is where you test the same object across a few different models and see what kind of result you can get. You might land on something more polished. And personally, I'm not a fan of the texture we end up with this car. So if you want something that really looks like a proper car, you're going to have to do a lot of testing, a lot of iteration, and a lot of refining the details. So don't expect this workflow to nail it on the first try because it won't. And after that, you refine the scene itself because what we got here is pretty basic. Better controls, more option, a few settings, but that's the starting point, and it took only one conversation to get there. Now, if you are a Codex user, you can do basically the same thing. You start with a similar prompt, and here I use the same exact one I gave Claude Code earlier. And again, you get a summary of all the models that are available. This time, I went straight in and asked for a transformer robot similar to Optimus Prime. And you can see Higgsfield picked Nano Banana Pro for that, but it failed. So this is worth knowing because image models have filters built into them, and they usually refuse if you ask for a close copy of a character that belongs to someone else, or a recognizable real person. That's there to avoid copyright and likeness problem. Different models draw the line in different places. So one might refuse where another is fine. So I asked for a variant using the same model and it failed again. So I told the agent to switch to a different image model instead. And it went with Seed Dream 4.5 and that one worked. So I think here the better fix is to describe the design you want rather than naming a character. You get something original and it converts to 3D just as well. Now, for the sake of this demo, I went with the very first reference I got. I didn't spend time refining the details or hunting for a better image model because that would have cost me more time and more credits. And here you can clearly see an issue with the image. The front and the left side are fine, but the back is a duplicate and the right side is actually showing the back again. So technically I'm missing the right side altogether, but I think that's fine because it still gives me 3 clear view instead of 4, so I will keep it. So then I just tell Codex to turn that image into a 3D model. And this time I'm using the same engine as the car, Tripo, but I'm using the multi-view version, so I'm feeding it 4 different angles instead of 1. Then Codex goes off and does its things with Higgsfield. And this is the final result. Here's what I noticed. Even though I use the same engine for the car and for this robot, some models seem to work better on certain kinds of object. With the car, I didn't think it handled the details all that well, but on something like this robot, I think it looks pretty great. It's not 100% perfect, but it suits it much better. And when you rotate it, the level of detail holds up. Everything feels like it connects properly, and nothing looks like it was invented out of nowhere. So for the 3D model itself, I'm pretty satisfied. I think this one came out better than the car, and that's just my opinion. The scene around it is still pretty generic though, and you could definitely add more to it and build a better design. So now that we started from scratch in both Claude Code and Codex, here's the thing worth pointing out. Even though the prompts were mostly the same and both of them understood the task, neither one built the same thing. The scene from Claude Code and the one from Codex and the one from my original demo are completely different. Which brings us to the third and final way, where instead of describing what I want, I hand it a proper structure file to read. So let me give you a quick overview of the demo you saw at the start. So before we get into the third and final method, I just want to take a quick minute to talk about the sponsor of this video, which is Aura. Aura is an AI platform for building landing pages, and the part I actually use it for is the template. There's a whole library of proper HTML templates in there that you can take inspiration from or just remix directly. So if you're starting out and you don't want to build from scratch, you can go through those and start from something that already looks good and they don't have that generic AI look, which is the problem with most of this stuff. So honestly, I think it's a very good way to learn on its own because you're seeing how a proper page is actually put together. There's also a big asset library with over 30,000 assets in it. They're AI generated images, so you can use them as placeholder in a real project, and they feel a bit more creative than pulling another stock photo. You can browse by category, so finding something is quick. Then there's the component section, which I like a lot. These are properly made components, so you can just copy one and adapt it to your own style. And there's a design.md file. That's just a plain text file that lays out your design rules, your colors, your typography, your spacing, that sort of thing. You give it to your AI, and every section it builds follows the same rules, which is the thing that stops a landing page looking like a 5 different websites stitched together. So if you want to get better at it, there's a 50% on the annual plan at the moment. So let's get back into the video. These are the 3 reference images I use. They're all Marvel-inspired characters, a Dr. Van Doom, Thor, and Spider-Man. And again, I ran into issue generating them. So rather than hunting for the right model to make a perfect copy of each character, I just went with a variant instead, even though they're still recognizable. For the Von Doom one, I used the Tripo model, the same one I used on the two cars and the robot, and that cost 9 credits. And for whatever reason, I think that model suits this character perfectly. The detail and the texture on it are better than the robot, in my opinion. And this was the cheapest option of the three. For the Thor variant, I used a Chinese model called Hunyan 3D, and that one costs a bit more, 19 credits to be precise. And this one creates a more realistic, shinier kind of model, which is pretty nice. So there are probably specific cases where that's exactly what you want. And for the Spider-Man variant, I used Meshy, which was one of the most expensive at 30 credits. I think this model produced a very particular kind of texture. It has a sort of clay sculpture feel to it, and I don't think that's a quality problem. I think that's just the kind of texture this model specializes in. That makes more sense when you see the next demo. One thing worth saying is that this whole scene, all three characters, was the first iteration. I didn't go back and redo the character or rework the scene, and I think the layout came out nicely with proper option in there. So what I did was take that demo and reverse engineer it into a full detailed structure prompt. And you can see here it has all the steps needed to reproduce the original demo as closely as possible. I'll put this file in the description so you can download it. Then all you need to do is feed it to your AI. But please don't paste it exactly as it is. And here's why. Step 1 is about 3 characters with details about each. So that part is the bit you can customize, and with AI, that's pretty easy. You could just say you want 3 sneakers instead, and that would be a nice use case. Step 2 is where each character gets a different model. So there you can pick whichever one you like the most, or test a different one, or just use the same model for all 3. This matters because if you paste my file in unchanged, you'll get something almost identical to what I built. Step 3 is the viewer itself. So here, if you got better ideas, you can add more settings in there. And step 4 is the setting for compressing it, all for the web. And that's about it. So let's see the new demo build from this file. Inside Claude Code or Codex, you just drag and drop the file in. And from there, if you adapt it properly, there's nothing else for you to do. You can see it checks how many credits I got left in my account. And then it selects all the engines I specify, generates the images, and builds everything on its own. So with this method, you didn't write a single prompt, it just read the file and go on with it. Here are the 3 reference images, and because the file asked for 3 characters without saying which ones, it went ahead and made up 3 of its own. And here's the final result. The first character uses the Tripo model, the same one from the car, the robot, and Von Doom. And you'll notice the texture is very similar. You also got the different surface option in here. So there's a clay version, a mesh version, and a setting to disintegrate the whole thing, which is pretty nice. For the second character, we're using the same Chinese model as the Thor variant. And again, you can see the texture is similar to what we got before, more realistic, shinier, and more polished. And for the last one, we use Meshy. This is exactly what I meant earlier about this specific texture, because if you look closely, it's almost identical to the Spider-Man variant. So that model is the expensive one at 30 credits, which means before you spend anything, you want to be sure that's the kind of texture you're after, because if it's not, that's a lot of credits gone. Now, this is only 3 models that I've explored, and there's a few more in there. I couldn't work through all of them and run a lot of generation because 270 credits goes down really fast. I started with 270 and now I'm down to 95. That went on 2 cars, Optimus Prime, the 3 Marvel inspired characters, and the 3 random ones from the file. So that's 9 models for 175 credits. And it goes quickly, and I didn't even have time to polish most of them. Now, the point of all this was really to show you the workflow behind it. Turning an image into a 3D model used to be the hard part, and now you've seen it, it's honestly the easy part. Once you got the 3D object, the rest is on you. Refine the scene, take your time with it, explore a bit, and make something that feels properly professional, then turn it into a demo and share it. One thing I should mention is that right now, these models are mostly static. They just sit there and you spin them around, and that's as far as it goes. And what you left here is a GLB file, and that's simply a single file that holds the shape and the texture together, and is the format that browser, game engines, and 3D software all understand, which means you can take it further. The same Higgsfield MCP can also rig a model so it adds a skeleton to your character and then applies an animation to it. Walking, running, waving, that sort of thing. And there's a big library of those to choose from. And if you rather do it yourself, there are MCP servers for Blender as well. So your agent can drive that too. I'm not a professional in that field, so I won't pretend to know the best way to do it, but the file is a normal 3D file and everything is open to you from there. And if you want to get more serious about this, get a bigger plan with more credits so you can try more models and make more variation to compare. So one last idea for you. If you're building landing page, you can drop one of these straight into your hero section and let people spin it around. This will add a wow factor instantly. And this technique is pretty easy. So that's 3D made easy. I think that's simpler than you expected because there's almost nothing for you to do. You guide your agent and it will handle everything. So I hope you found this useful and that you will make something great with it. And if you do, just tag me on LinkedIn or X so I can see what you came up with. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.